Good afternoon. My name is Barkha Dutt, and here at the Mojo Story, we continue to keep our eye on the farmers' protests. It is Guru Nanak Jayanti today, and even on this holy day, we have farmers who are still on the road, men and women, as the temperatures plummet and tempers rise. This is now getting to be a volatile situation. In fact, Yogendra Yadav, who is spearheading the farmers' agitation, or among those who spearheading it, said to us that what is a historic occasion is now in danger of turning into a historic tragedy. At the moment, the farmers believe that too many conditions have been laid down for them to accept the offer of talks. They want unconditional talks, and that too to take place with senior government representatives. Let's take a look at some of the other images that are coming from these protests. As we said, it's Guru Nanak Jayanti, and these men and women are still on the road. And these are some of the images that we are seeing on our screen. We are seeing farmers on tractors. We are seeing women forming a major part of this protest. There are also reports coming in. Farmers groups are saying that the cold, remember at night it gets quite cold, has claimed the life of an elderly farmer. We are awaiting more details on that as well. And what we're saying is that this is an increasingly volatile situation, and one which the government needs to intervene in very soon. But at the same time, the farmers' protests have been beset now with controversies. It's not clear who is speaking for the farmers and when. The right wing has targeted some of the farmers' spokespeople, some of whom have appeared on this very platform for being Khalistani supporters. There are other controversies with the BJP saying that these protests have been politicized. Removing the politics and the rhetoric, let's welcome on the program now Devinder Sharma, one of India's foremost agricultural scientists and experts, to separate the rhetoric from the reality and talk a little bit about what is at the heart of the problem. Thank you, sir, for joining us. I think that first let's take a moment to also look at the day we are talking on. ये Guru Nanak Dev Ji ka Jayanti hai. It is Guru Purb. And you have, thousands of farmers who are still on the road. First, if you would like to talk just about the irony of that moment.
Well, you have very rightly said it, Barkha, that today is a Guru Nanak Dev birthday. And in Punjab, this is all celebration, as you know. In fact, celebration all over the world. And today, unfortunately, we are seeing Punjab farmers pitted against the entire issue or debate on the streets of New Delhi or adjoining New Delhi. I think this is very sad, and I think we would like to see that in the spirit of what Guru Nanak Dev Ji has taught us, let us try to find an amicable solution to this entire debate, issue or conflict, whatever you want to call it.
Now, what could that solution be? Because अगर आप सरकार से बात करें तो वो कहते हैं भाई हम तो बातचीत के लिए राजी हैं. अगर आप किसानों से बात करें देवेंद्र जी तो वो कहते हैं कि जिस तरह की कंडीशंस रखी गई हैं इन टॉक्स के लिए they're not acceptable. For example, asking the farmers to move from the borders of the capital to Burari. Farmers are calling these Burari grounds an open jail. दूसरा, farmers चाहते हैं कि किसी तरह की assurance that these laws will be held in abeyance till the talks happen वो नहीं आ रही है. तो in circumstances में किस तरह की बातचीत हो सकती है? What can break the stalemate?
I think the foremost thing is that both the sides must appear as far as the talks are concerned with open mind. Let's be receptive to each other's ideas, each other's projections of what is good for the farmers, and let's talk it over. Why can't we do it? After all, I remember even in the World Trade Organization debates, which has continued for several decades now, there have been, let's say members or participants coming from more than 150 countries, and they have been sitting across the table, discussing it, debating it, deliberating it, and ultimately coming out with something that is possible. So why can't we do it in this particular case? Government and farmers should be sitting on one platform and talking it over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days, whatever. I think there is a need for the talks to continue.
Who is the onus on to make these talks happen?
Well, of course, the government must invite them. Let's be open. Let's be open. Let's be receptive. After all, this is the majority population of the country, and they need to be heard. That is what I thought democracy is all about. So we must listen to them, invite them. Let's not wait for set up another date, which is a fortnight later or whatever, after even December 3. Let's do it in quick succession, because that's what we want the stalemate to end. We want the standoff to end. And I think the nation is looking with abated breaths for the solution to come out of this.
Now, Devinder ji, I have to ask you this. You know, even people who want to support the farmers, और मुझे ऐसे पिछले दिनों में बहुत messages आए हैं. Even people who want to support the farmers, they say that हमें समझ नहीं आ रहा है. We're not able to understand what the issue is, because on the one hand, they have the government that argues that we are removing the middlemen. On the other hand, you have the farmers who are opposing these legislations who actually say, as P. Sainath said to me, कि अब middleman का रूप बदल जाएगा. पहले middleman जिस तरह से हम जानते थे वो था, अब middleman Gucci और Armani पहन के आएगा. The middleman will become the big business houses or their touts. You know, if you had to take one sentence, एक बहुत simple non-technical sentence, और अगर आपको लोगों को समझाना होता कि this is the problem with the farm laws, what would that one sentence be?
But let's be very clear. Farmers in India have been exploited over the last few decades. And I think we need to understand, the people of India needs to understand what has been the extent of exploitation that the farmers have suffered. And I think that anger that was building up over the decades is now finding a vent. It's now finding a vent. It is being channelized into this, through this the central laws, and farmers believe that they are in for more trouble in the days to come or in the years to come. Let's understand that. Let me elaborate this particular point. You know, there was an OECD study, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development study, along with the CREAR sometimes back. The study says that between 2000 and 2016-17, which means 16 years, Indian farmers lost 45 lakh crores. Every year they were losing 2.64 lakh crore. Did you ever hear anybody say that this is an extraordinary crisis that has hit Indian agriculture? Nobody talked about it. In fact, not many people even know that this has happened in India. And this, I think, is an underestimate. This is what the study pointed out, because they studied only a handful of crops. They didn't look into the entire Indian agriculture. So look at the phenomenal, suffering that farmers have undergone for so many years. Then if you look at a study which the Economic Survey 2016 carried, and that survey said that the average income of a farming family in 17 states of India, which means half the country, is 20,000 rupees a year. Barkha, can you imagine farmers surviving in less than 1,700 rupees a month? Imagine, I can't even rear a cow in 1,700 rupees a month. Imagine how these farmers are surviving. Now, the point I'm trying to make is, over the last 4 decades that at least I have been tracking the agriculture, Indian agriculture, I realize that the Indian farmers have been deliberately kept impoverished, because the economic design was so woven that agriculture has to be sacrificed for the sake of economic reforms. This has continued over the decades, and I think we must admire Indian farmers that they remained hungry themselves, but they fed the nation remarkably well. I think it is time for the nation to understand that the nation must stand for the people who have been actually subsidizing the nation all these years. I have always said that these are the farmers who have subsidized the nation in reality. Because when you keep the prices low, food prices low, we know inflation remains under control. That's what the government claims. And of course, secondly, we know that, the wages also would be under control. So in fact, and I have also heard many economists saying that, the best way or the best reform would be when you move people out of agriculture into the urban cities,
yes,
urban centers, because urban centers need cheap labor. In other words, they are saying that urban areas need dihadi mazdoor. So you move people out of agriculture to make them dihadi mazdoor. Please tell me, is this economic design? Is this something which is going to help this mass population? We have seen with just 2 days of lockdown. Just a minute. 2 days of lockdown, we saw 8 crore people walking interstate and intrastate back to their villages. That means that design has not worked. And I think we should be very clear. We need to now reverse that economic design to make agriculture economically viable, profitable. That can be the engine or a powerhouse of economic growth.
I want to ask you something very specifically, the minimum support price. Let's talk about the MSP. Now, there are those like P. Sainath who believe that even guaranteeing the MSP is not enough. There is structural changes needed. There are others who believe that if the government were to put the MSP in writing into the law, or at least say that private players will not be able to procure at a price lower than the MSP. If this guarantee is written into the law, it would help sort of contain the anger on the street. Do you believe that a guaranteed procurement price, or a guarantee that private players will have to accept the MSP of that year as a threshold, should be written into the law? Is it enough? And how do you respond to the counter argument of those who are saying that the MSP is set every year, it's an administrative executive decision, it's not a legislative decision, and so it can't be in the law?
So I think it is very fascinating to see this debate erupting for no reason. I think there's just a kind of a design that is being, or a narrative that is being built to discredit this entire phenomena. Now let's be very clear, and I would like to make it look by looking into what the arguments are from both sides. When I go to a TV show and I find the markets or the corporates saying, oh, the farmers are being misled. Once the laws come into place, then you will see that the farmers will be getting a higher price. I find the economists also saying the farmers will be getting a higher price. The policymakers are also saying that the farmers will get a higher price. If a higher price, the question is to what? Where is that limit? The benchmark for a higher price is, of course, minimum support price. If you are willing to give a higher price than minimum support price, I don't understand why should the industry or the economist or the policymakers objecting to the farmers' demand of making minimum support price a legal right for the farmers. There should be no trading below that MSP announced. This is only raising the benchmark as far as the farmers are concerned. And this means that farmers will get at least an assured price. That is the real freedom the farmers want. Even if he sells in Bangalore or in Chandigarh or in New Delhi, he knows that at least he will get the minimum support price. That's the real freedom for farmers. I think, why are we objecting to that? If the industry is not willing to say this, that they are keen to have the MSP a legal instrument, that means they are not being honest. That means the price they're going to offer is not going to be equal to MSP. So what are we then trying to claim? That the laws are going to be beneficial to the farmers. I think that is where the test is applied. And I think this is the minimum that we can do. Price.
So are you saying that if there were to be an amendment to these farm laws, or an addendum, which, by the way, is supported even by groups like the Swadeshi Jagran Manch that are politically affiliated to this government, which said that if farmers are selling to a private player, that trading value threshold has to be set by that year's government mandated MSP, that would take care of the biggest problem that farmers have? And can you see any reason, legal or otherwise, that this should not be in the law?
Well, that's what I said. This is what the country needs at the moment. And I think we have exploited farmers a lot. Trade has exploited farmers a lot. We all know that 6% farmers in India get minimum support price. 94% farmers were dependent on markets. If markets were so good, please tell me, why would farmers be only demanding MSP? They demand MSP because MSP gives them assurance. And just to give you one example, even in this the paddy season that we have which has just ended, 30 to 40 lakh tons of paddy has actually come from Bihar and Uttar Pradesh to be sold in Punjab. There are hundreds of FIRs filed for this illegal, transportation. But the fact of the matter is, why did it happen? That because farmers in Bihar and UP are getting a price of 1,100 rupees or 1,200 rupees per quintal for paddy, whereas in Punjab you are getting the MSP 1,888 rupees per quintal. That is why 30 to 40 lakh tons of paddy has come into Punjab. So please tell me, why do you think that this minimum support price is not the right benchmark? I think
Can I intervene there? Because the argument that you made, that I've put on my screen, more than 90% farmers are already dependent on markets. The Shanta Kumar panel confirmed that under 6% of India's farmers are covered by MSP. And I know that you have broken it down further. In fact, if we can get that graphic up, that statistic up as well. Mr. Sharma, you have been pointing out that under 20% and under 17% for wheat and paddy growers are covered by MSP. But this argument can also be reversed, Devinder ji, because लोग ये कहेंगे कि अगर 6% ही farmers MSP से covered हैं, तो MSP focused agitation क्यों है?
वो इसलिए है, यही हमें जानना है कि 71%. I remember Mr. Sharad Pawar, when he was the agriculture minister, he made a statement in parliament saying 71% farmers do not know what is MSP. They do not understand what is the concept of MSP. They haven't heard of MSP because the government did not expand that MSP, into the entire country or create a network of APMC mandis where MSP could be delivered. In fact, they don't even know what they have been missing all these years. So when they don't even know what is MSP, how do you expect them to stand for a demand which they have never known what it means, how good it is for them? I think in Punjab and Haryana, let's be very clear, this is the food bowl of the country. In Punjab and Haryana, from the days of the Green Revolution, we have had MSP. 97% plus is the procurement for paddy. You know, so much is the procurement in case of paddy. In the case of wheat, 80% of wheat is procured by the state. Roughly about 56,000 crores, comes to Punjab by way of MSP every year. Now, farmers know if this goes away, they're going to be hit. They know that it is going to hit them. They know where it is, where they're going to suffer. It's a question of life and death for them. And I think what is happening in Punjab should happen in the rest of the country, in the sense that we need to expand the APMC network. We need to provide all farmers with MSP. Why not? If we can have minimum wages for labor, why can't we have minimum price for farmers?
But the government is repeatedly saying, Devinder ji, that this MSP is guaranteed.
No, but we know farmers are not foolish. They understand that, all these years, at least 17 years that I know of, 17 or 18 years, there have been efforts by economists, by the government leaders, by ministers saying very openly on various platforms that we want APMC to be dismantled. We want MSP to go. There should be price discovery. Price discovery will happen only if MSP is removed from the scene. Now, this has been happening for over decades. And I remember Punjab farmers at various platforms have echoed this, that, if you, try to play around with MSP, we are going to be very angry, and that you'll see the kind of protest that's happening. And it is happening because farmers realize, see, once you dilute the APMC mandis, because now actually what we have is one country, two markets. One is within the APMC mandis, one is outside the APMC mandis. Farmers understand this very well. When you are saying in the APMC mandis, you have to pay tax, traders have to pay tax. Outside the mandis, you don't even need a license, you just need a PAN card, and you don't have to pay any tax. So they know that the traders will move outside the mandi, which means the bigger trader as well as the small trader. Once they move outside the mandi, the APMC will become redundant. And once they start becoming redundant, MSP will also go away. In any case, government is toying with the idea of withdrawing MSP support, saying, oh, we have enough paddy, we have enough wheat. So farmers understand all this. That is why
basically MSP without procurement guarantee is meaningless, right? Because tomorrow, even if the government announces MSP and then says we've got food surplus this year, then what happens? Or grain surplus this year, not food surplus, but grain surplus.
See, all I'm saying is that this will mean that once you make MSP legal, you are raising the benchmark. It doesn't mean that the trade which deals with, or the business which deals with agriculture will go away or leave the country. It's not going to happen like that. The only point I'm trying to make is when it raises the MSP bar, it actually makes it economical for farmers to get into that cultivation.
As an economic principle, sorry.
Just 1 minute, Barkha. Look at Kerala. Kerala has announced an MSP for vegetables. For 16 vegetables, they have said cost of production plus 20% profit. Okay. And they have set aside 35 crore of rupees, but they haven't yet started doing anything. Why? Because the prices are already higher than that. So you don't have to pay for everything. The point is, this is again a narrative that is being built. Oh my God, the burden on government will be so much. Where will they stock and so on? It is not so. The fact is, you have only raised the benchmark, which means every trade has to now give farmers their due price.
So this is a very interesting thing you've said. You've said that just because the government sets an MSP, it doesn't mean that private players can't charge more than that. And there'll be people who will be willing to charge more than that. All we're doing is setting a minimum price below which prices can't fall. Now, is there any principle, economic or legal, because of which you think this cannot be written into the law? Because I've been arguing with friends who support the farm laws, and they say that MSP cannot be written into the law because it's an administrative decision.
Again, a very interesting, argument that I find. For last so many decades, we have been giving MSP, and under the same administrative norms that we have been delivering MSP, why can't we do this again? Why can't we do it for the rest of the country? A. B. If it is not in the law, make it in the law, bring it in the law. I don't think there is something sacrosanct that it can't be brought into the law. You create another law. If you could create a law for the industry, as far as agriculture is concerned, you can also create an industry, create a law for the farmers. I don't think there is anything which restricts our ability to do that.
Right. Now, why are mainstream economists not actually coming out and explaining this? Because what's happening right now is that this is a conversation that has got politically polarized. You have also seen that this movement, some people are saying, is being hijacked by other voices. Let me give you my own example. You know, I set out to find out who was a turbaned man in a viral video who was negotiating at the barricades. I had no idea who he was. It turned out to be an actor called Deep Sidhu. I called him to my show just like I've called you. I thought farmers के बारे में बात होगी. The right wing was calling him a Khalistani supporter. I asked him that, thinking he'll deny it, we'll move on. Instead, he embraced it. He began defending Bhindranwale. The whole conversation became about that. Now, I bring this up because I want to understand who is speaking for these farmers. How do you ensure that the issue and the focus remains on the farmers? How do you ensure that the movement does not slip into the hands of those who are going to damage it?
Well, I think this is not the first time. Every movement, that at least not in this particular case, but earlier, whether it was the Anna movement or whether it was Baba Ramdev's movement, and I have been with them, and I know how the effort was made to discredit those movements. So it's not a first time that we are seeing this or watching this. Now, having said that, I think let's look into your basic question that you asked. These mainline economists are saying this. I think if you've seen some of my writings, I have said that these are the lazy economists. Lazy economists, because it's so easy being a market economist nowadays. You cut and paste what is happening in America and Europe, and then you sell it as an agriculture reform in India. Now, it's very sad that the same reforms that we are talking about, as going to be very, very beneficial to Indian farmers, have actually failed in America and Europe. Now, I would like those economists to tell us why are they trying to tell us or to sell us that model which has failed in America and Europe. Now, let me explain that, Barkha. In America, the same open markets have been in operation for over 6 and 7 decades. A chief economist of U.S. Department of Agriculture has gone on record saying that in America since 1960s, the farm income, if you adjust for inflation, has been on a steep decline. Now, this is happening in a country which is open market for agriculture. Then let's look into another development. The bankruptcy that American farmers are saddled with this year is $425 billion. The rate of suicide in rural America is 45% higher than urban America. And Mr. Donald Trump's agriculture secretary has gone on record saying, in America, you either get big or get out. When Ronald Reagan was the president, his agriculture secretary had made that infamous statement saying that in America, get big or get out. The International Food Policy Research Institute's Director General has given a suggestion for India, and he has said, move up or move out. Now, which means what? Basically, you are saying you want small farmers to get out of agriculture. Now, if this is what the economic model is going to push Indian farmers to, they understand it very well. That is why they are saying our lands will be taken away. We will be exploited by the big players and so on and so forth. We have heard it all again. Now, if you look at America, I just want to give you another example. We have dairy farms in America, small dairy farms. In the last 10 years, 17,000 dairy farms have closed down in America. And since 1993, a study tells us that since 1970, 93% of the dairy farms have closed down in America, and yet the milk production has gone up. It is not that because these small farmers have moved out and the corporates have taken over, so the milk production has gone up. This is not only one story that I'm telling you. Across the board, you find this is what has happened in America. This is what has happened in Europe. Now, look at the big retail companies in America. When we blame the small middlemen, look at the bigger middlemen. The Walmarts, the Tesco's, the Sainsbury, and so on. They don't have a stock limit. Have the farmers got more income in America? The answer is no. I gave you the figures that they are under so much of bankruptcy and there are suicides happening in America. Farmers have got out of agriculture and so on and so forth. And if you think that America is market efficiency, let me tell you that market is actually surviving or thriving on huge agriculture subsidies, both visible and invisible, that are pumped into agriculture.
Let me for 2 minutes argue this from the other side, because a lot of people are arguing it from the other side. So first, there's a question on our screen that that says farm income is low, because you mentioned that the average household income for farmers is 20,000 rupees a year. That's a staggeringly low figure. But as someone on this Garib banker, he or she calls themselves, farm income is low because too many people are working in farming in India, and this constant push that we hear that actually we will remain a poor country and our people will remain poor till people remain dependent on farming. How would you respond to this?
This is again the same part of the same narrative or the same economic design that we have been made to believe is the only way forward. And I think as I gave you the earlier example of what happened after 2 days of lockdown, 8 crore people walking back to their villages. They, as you covered it very well in your broadcast or telecast, and you showed that for farmers walked for hundreds, thousands of kilometers for several days with all their families and so on and so forth. I think that should have opened the eyes of the people. We do not need to move these people out of agriculture into the urban areas. What we need is to make agriculture profitable and economically viable. That is something which because economics 101 doesn't teach us, economics 201 doesn't teach us, so we are confined in that box. We don't want to see beyond that box. That has been the travesty in this country. Now, your question, I just want to talk to you something which I have, of course, said on various platforms, but would be very relevant here. I did an analysis sometimes back to find out why farmers have been deliberately kept impoverished, or what is the extent that people don't even know how the farmers' income has been kept low. In 1970, the minimum support price was 76 rupees per quintal. 45 years later, in 2015, it became 1,450 rupees per quintal, which was a jump of 19 times, not 19%, but 19 times. Now, if you see the income parity norms and try to see what happened to the other sections of the society, the basic pay and DA, and I'm not counting the emoluments, the basic pay and DA of government employees went up by 120 to 150 times in that 45-year period. The basic pay and DA of university and college professors and lecturers went up by 150 to 170 times in those 45 years. The basic pay and DA of school teachers went up by 280 to 320 times in that particular period of 45 years. And the income of farmers, if you measure by the wheat price, went up by only 19 times. Now, I'm sure you would agree with me, Barkha, if the other sections of the society had increased in the same proportion as farmers, they would have either quit their job or would have committed suicide. So why don't we ensure that the farmers too get that kind of income which other sections of the society have got? 50% of the country, 60 crore people, I think when they get more in their hand, there will be more demand, and that demand will create a rocket dose as far as economic growth is concerned.
How do you respond to the government's argument and the argument of some economists that these laws are going to make the farmer richer? The argument is कि जो बीच का middleman है वो अब हट रहा है, farmer can sell directly to the market. And this question has again come on. You call them lazy economists, but we have a question here from Hemal Thakkar, who says that he finds all your interventions brilliant, but how do you explain the fact that not one mainstream economist is criticizing the farm laws?
Well, I don't have to answer that because I have already said the mainland economists are basically primarily market economists. I think what this country needs to debate, there should be an open debate between the market economist and the other economists. I think it is time to understand, and let the people understand why there are people voices challenging that kind of a design or model that is being imposed on us. That, I think, I'm sure you will agree, is a democratic kind of exercise which the nation must adhere to or must get into. Having said that, this question that the farmers will get a higher income, and as you rightly said, they will be the word you used was they will get more income in their hands, if I'm not mistaken. Now the point, that is the which I raised in the beginning. If you are already willing to pay a higher income to farmers, or higher income to what? I want to know that. Isn't the MSP for 23 crops that the government announces becomes a kind of a benchmark? You are willing to pay a higher price for that. That's what I understand. If that's what the economists are saying, then what is the problem by setting up a minimum bench or a minimum standard of saying that, at least make MSP a legal right for farmers? You are in any case going to pay a higher price. Either you are being dishonest when you say that you are going to pay a higher price. Otherwise, I see no reason why you should be contesting that, why you should be challenging that, why you should be worried about that. In fact, you should be all happy. You should be on the side of farmers protesting at the outskirts of Delhi to say that, yes, make a legal right.
And as we are having this conversation, I'll come back to the issue of middlemen. I do want to talk about a statement that has now officially come from the farmers' groups. 55-year-old Janak Raj has died at the Bahadurgarh border. We were having these reports; they were not confirmed. We didn't have the details, but we do now have his picture, and we can take it up while I take a moment to talk about this tragedy. He died yesterday night at Bahadurgarh. He was actually asleep in his car. He was a tractor mechanic by profession. He'd come along with the other protesters. He was helping to repair their tractors, and his car caught fire. So the initial report had actually suggested that this was because of the cold, but now we're being told that this has happened because something went wrong. Because remember that there is no place where there's organized assembly. So we're actually seeing a situation where anything can happen. And Devinder ji, this has happened on Guru Nanak Jayanti, so I think it compounds in a sense the tragedy. So we just want to take this moment. This statement has come from the farmers groups just now. If you want to talk a little bit about the kind of potential tragedies waiting to happen if the farmers are not brought to the dialogue table soon.
Well, I think it's very unfortunate to hear what you said, and this is kind of tragedy. I think is waiting to happen more and more because just see, you have been covering it also. We have also been watching on the television 70 years, 80 years, 90-year people on the streets, and they are braving the water cannons, they are braving the weather, the cold temperature, and their families, their children. I think it is time that we accept that this is a problem that we're going to have more and more in the days to come. So let us have a dialogue as quickly as possible. Let's sort it out, that this particular issue, as quickly as possible. I think this will be in the interest of
what worries you. What worries you? We're seeing this statement on the death of Janak Raj and Bahadurgarh border, and this was an accident. There are many elderly people in this crowd, right? And these are big crowds. What worries you? What are you the most apprehensive about?
Well, I think as everyone knows that, so far the movement has been very peaceful. The protests have been very peaceful. Farmers, wherever I have seen the demonstration in this country, they've always been very, very, very particular that they're not going to disturb the common people, whether it is the ambulances or whether it is people who urgently require attention. They've already cleared the way for them to pass. This has happened. But I think the more we test their patience, we never know what kind of players would be there who would like to distort the picture or who would like to kind of create a problem. Let's not get into this situation. We would all pray that nothing like that happens, and we are having an amicable solution in the days to come. I think that is what the country is looking forward to.
Okay, let's take 5 minutes to just take some viewer questions. Himanshu says that, all right, even if you set the new MSP as you're suggesting, the fact is that there's an economic reality and the government does not have enough money to pay this MSP.
This is a very interesting question which crops up every now and then. Whenever you have to pay farmers, there is no money with the government. Everyone starts saying, oh, where is the money? Or the fiscal deficit will go up. Or they will say, if you write off the farmer's loan, I have seen television shows which says, waive the waiver. This should not happen because this is upsetting the national balance sheet and so on and so forth. And when the NPAs of the banks are written off, I remember a former chief economist of India, chief economic advisor of India saying, writing off of the corporate loans leads to economic growth. Now, look at that. When you write off the corporate loans, they are saying it leads to economic growth. But when you write off or waive off the farmer's loan, it leads to credit indiscipline. Now, this is a kind of a thinking which I think should go away, which we need to clarify that this is why when I said, the lazy economist picking up the terms from America and Europe and trying to tell us that, the more you write off the corporate bad loans, it leads to economic growth. How is this possible? I think even a common man will understand that this is not true. The other part is, now look at the 7th Pay Commission. The 7th Pay Commission, when it was brought in, was for the central government employees, which means it was an additional expenditure of 1,02,000 crores every year. Now, when the Credit Suisse report had said, a study had said that when it will be spread all over the country with the state governments, PSUs and so on implementing it, the additional expenditure every year would be 4,80,000 crores. Did you hear anybody saying that the fiscal deficit will go up? Did you hear anybody saying that there is no money with the government and we should freeze this or something like that? But you try to give 4 lakh crore to the farmers, which is 50% of the country. I'm sure hell will break loose in this country. Why are you paying these people? They don't deserve it, so on and so forth. Now look at another Credit Suisse report. It tells us that between 2014 and December 2019, The impaired asset of nationalized banks is 16.88 lakh crore. Impaired assets, you have to search your dictionary to know what is impaired asset. Then we learn that it is actually 7.7 lakh crore has been written off, and the remaining 9.5 lakh crore or so is the outstanding NPA, which again will be written off after some time. Did you hear anybody question where will the money come from for that 16.88 lakh crore write-off? The point I'm trying to make is that is how the economic thought of this country is. Whenever we talk of rich, the richest or the top 1%, nobody has any problems. But all problems come up only when you have to give money to the poor or to the farmers.
One of the other questions on our screen is coming repeatedly, and that is that this is a protest by the farmers of Punjab and Haryana. And that's why I've picked up this question so that you can address it. It says, are only Punjabi farmers protesting, or is it farmers all across India? Now, there are those who say the media is only covering the protests that are close to the capital, and there are other farm protests, but there's also the figure that you know better than me, that the majority of farmers in India are small and marginal farmers. And the criticism of these protests has been that these are not by small and marginal farmers. When I asked Sainath this, he said that you need a reality check on what you define as a rich farmer, which is a correct thing. But how would you answer this, Devinder Sharma, the criticism that this is mainly relatively prosperous farmers of Punjab and Haryana? This is not my words, these are the words of the critics of this movement.
Well, first of all, how many rich farmers do have in this country? Forget about Punjab only. Just 4% farmers in this country have more than 10 hectares of land. This is the official data. Just 10 hectares of land, if you call them rich, there must be, of course, there are bigger people I know who have got huge, land area with them, or that's a different question. But 4% farmers have more than 10%. In Punjab, let me also make it very clear that every third farmer in Punjab is below the poverty line. Now, please tell me, do you think that the people who are below the poverty line are not part of this agitation? The point is that those people who are asking this question or raising this should come and at least spend a day with those farmers on the streets. Then they will understand what kind of farmers are they. 5 acres, 6 acres, 7 acres, if you think they are better off farmers, I think we'll have to redefine what farming is in India. But the fact of the matter is, please let us not compartmentalize the farming community. I think let's understand what is the bigger problem that the farmers face, and that is the exploitation that has gone on relentlessly by keeping farm prices low. And I think the time has come then when we must give farmers his rightful price, his rightful income that he deserves. What is wrong in that?
Now, I have to ask you, is the MSP the main MSP and procurement, the main make or break thing? Because one comment on my screen by Aftab says farmers are not rejecting the Farm Act per se, but they're asking for adding MSP in the Act. But there are other people in the movement who say that there are structural changes needed. There's also been some focus on the electricity dimension, the rate at which electricity will have to be paid for. So do you think that working in a trading value, a trading threshold into these acts will end the protests?
Well, I think first of all, let's be clear. There are various demands that the farmers have, added onto their list and so on. But primarily, the major demand is that they want an assured income or an assured price. That's what they are asking for. And I think that is where the MSP question comes up again and again and again and again. So I think one, we need have a legal framework where we ensure that there is no trading happening in this country below the MSP. And the second part is, yes, there are problems with the other sections also, which needs to be addressed. But therefore, I'm sure for those particular cases or for those particular issues, farmers wouldn't have walked all the way to Delhi or wouldn't have been on protest for so long. These are things which could be addressed, and these are things which should be addressed when we are sitting across the table to negotiate.
So the main issue is the MSP. And if the government were to do something as simple as to legislate on its own stated promise कि MSP वही रहेगा, all the government needs to do, this is important to understand, all that the government according to you needs to do is to add either a new law or amend these current laws to say no private player can trade below the MSP. That in itself could get these farmers off the road. Am I summarizing it correctly? Have I lost you? Are you able to hear me?
I lost you.
All right. Are you able to hear me now? Are you able to hear me now? Why don't you reconnect? Why don't you reconnect? And we will just try and actually get you back. We'll try and get Devinder Sharma back because we were at a very critical point in the conversation. So let's just have him join back. But in the meantime, we can spend 2 minutes talking about the fact that there is a farmer who has in fact died. And he died while asleep in his car at Bahadurgarh border. His name was Janak Raj, and he was a tractor mechanic. And this has happened on Gurupurb, a day of celebration for Sikhs, for Punjabis, for all followers of Guru Nanak Ji. And there you can see him. That is 55-year-old Janak Raj, whose job was to repair the tractors. Tractors like these. We have some images of these farmers in their tractors, and we've all seen them. And think of a man who came with these farmers to repair the tractors. 55-year-old Janak Raj. And let's take a moment to think about that life so tragically lost, underlining the need to in fact bring back. And bring farmers back to the dialogue table. All right, I can see Devinder Sharma is actually back with us, so I'm going to welcome him back. I'm hoping you can hear me. We were at a very critical point in the conversation. I was asking you, are you saying that if the government were to simply convert into law what it's already been saying politically, which is no private player will be allowed to trade below the MSP announced for that year, because the MSP will change year to year, that would be enough to get the farmers protesting on the road, off the road? Would that be enough?
Well, as I said earlier, this is the major demand, and all that the farmers are asking is an assured price, assured income. And I think this is a mechanism by which we can convince farmers that you are assured, or you will be always given an MSP that is announced for that particular year. I think that's the kind of a legal, aspect that should be taken care of. And in fact, the farmers are now asking that, not only for wheat and rice, the minimum support price should be a legal right for farmers across the spectrum, which means for the 23 crops that the farmers, always get the government to announce the MSP for. So that is what they are asking. The other demands that they are raising, I'm sure, can be easily addressed when we are sitting across the table. I think that is something we must move on.
Okay, I have to end, but I have to ask you, how optimistic are you of a compromise being reached? Do you see any signs of the government understanding the gravity of the situation and upholding the dignity and the economic rights of the farmers?
But I think that's a very big question that everyone is worried about or thinking about. And I think it's a big challenge at this moment that if we don't act immediately or don't act soon, the things may go out of hands. And I think everyone would like that, there is an amicable solution. We reach a kind of a decision which would bring confidence for the farmers. And I think that is what is required. But when I see statements like that, we are not going to move away from this, and there are kinds of other issues being thrown up, I get a little worried, because after all, farmers this time, as if we all see these statements made, they have come up with 4 months of ration at least, and they want to dig in. And I think that kind of a message that yes, the farmers think this is an opportunity to address the issue which has lingered on for years. So I think here is an opportunity that we must not lose of.
Thank you, Devinder Sharma. You have used data and facts to explain so many complex things in a simple way. And what I'm taking away actually is that this is a manageable crisis. It needs the government to make good legally what it has already promised politically. The government is already on record saying that there will be no change in MSP. The Prime Minister himself has said it. If the Prime Minister is giving this assurance, there is absolutely no reason why this should not be able to be converted into law to at least say that the annual MSP rate that is set by the government, no trading can take place below that value, and that should hold across 23 crops that are covered by the MSP. Thank you very much. I think all these days so many people have been asking us कि कुछ बताइए तो कि problem क्या है, and I think and rather solution क्या है, and you have given us both the problem and the solution. Thank you, and thank you to our viewers for listening very carefully. People say that the audience is not interested in serious things. I think the engagement on our live stream tells us otherwise. A lot of people wanted to understand this issue, and no better person than Devinder Sharma to explain it to us. Thank you, sir. See you soon. Bye-bye.